One, two, three. Can you hear me?
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, January 21st, 2019. It's also Martin Luther King Day, and we have got a lot of stuff to talk about. So the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Sam is in our control room again and ready to just basically answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and so forth. Now, quick little program note. Pardon me. In our third hour today, we're going to have Tom, and I hope I'm not going to butcher this, Kaczynski, who has written a book, After Trump, How Nationalism Can Save America. And we're going to be talking with him about where he thinks the country is going to go in the post-Trump years. So we'll be talking about that here. Meanwhile, getting into the news here, as I said before, it's Martin Luther King Day. And it's rather interesting how much the country has changed, because Martin Luther King was out there advocating for a colorblind society. And today, that's actually considered racist by today's left. Remember when they came on out with Black Lives Matter, and then somebody said, well, all lives matter, and they said, oh, no, that's being racist, that's being racist. So it's a complete reversal of Dr. King's legacy. Now, Dr. King was a man of peace. He was a great orator, very inspirational speaker. And the day before he was killed, he made a speech called the Mountaintop Speech, where he basically called for a boycott of Coca-Cola and Wonder Bread. And boycotts are very powerful. And maybe it's time that we start doing that again, not necessarily Coca-Cola and Wonder Bread, but Microsoft and Walmart and Monsanto. Some of our history's greatest peacemakers have used boycotts to great effect. They do work. That's why Israel is so afraid of BDS, Gandhi especially. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of people are trying to hijack Dr. King's legacy for their own particular agenda, and there are a lot of people over on the left saying, that Martin Luther King would have gone for open borders and welcoming everybody in. According to his speechwriter, Martin Luther King Jr.'s own speechwriter said he was absolutely opposed to illegal immigration. And so you have the Democrats are out there, even though they voted for funding a border wall just 5 years ago. Today, it's absolutely not, absolutely not. And the agenda seems to be simply denying Trump any kind of a political victory and to heck with whatever problems it causes for anybody else. So today, Martin Luther King Day is a celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. And for reasons that might become very obvious, they don't want a lot of discussion about exactly how he died. Now, the official story is that this loner, James Earl Ray, shot Dr. King on the second balcony of the Lorraine Motel, shooting from a restroom in a rooming house just across the way. But James Earl Ray denied doing it. He was coerced into a confession, which he immediately retracted, and that was basically it. The judge says, no, we got your confession. That's it. You're going away. End of story. But there were a lot of odd things about the assassination. And one is, of course, the fact that ballistic tests could never match the rifle owned by James Earl Ray to the bullet that killed Dr. King. And to get into the specifics about it, James Earl Ray's rifle had a manufacturing defect which left a deep gouge in every bullet that was fired through it. And the bullet that was recovered from Dr. King did not have that gouge. There was that strange situation where Dr. King preferred being on the ground floor of where he was staying, and there had been a last-second change in his reservation, and nobody knows where that came from, that basically put him up there on that high place. But the most important one, and we have this detailed on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, relates to this iconic photo of Dr. King lying on the balcony, and 4 people around him are all pointing in the direction where the shot came from. And we've been told all along they're pointing at the bathroom window in the rooming house where James Earl Ray was shooting from. But if you look at a wider view of that area, you see they're not, in fact, pointing at that bathroom at the rooming house. They're actually pointing to the roof of the building next door. So there's another reason to doubt the official story. Now, James Earl Ray, of course, passed away in prison of an illness that could have been treated had he been let out. At the time of his passing, he was arguing for a new trial based on the evidence that I mentioned about the gouge that was left in bullets by his rifle not being present on the bullet that killed Martin Luther King. And the FBI held ballistics tests, and again, the rifle produced the gouge. The FBI said the tests were inconclusive because the gun hadn't been properly cleaned, and then they stalled and stalled and stalled on new tests until James Earl Ray passed away, at which point the court said, well, nobody else has standing to challenge the earlier conclusions, and that was basically the end of it. So if you think it smells to high heaven, it really, really does. And quite a few people are out here on Martin Luther King Day saying, you know, it may be time to have another look at this. Now, Dr. King's family, following his assassination, they were lauded and cheered and lots of sympathy and, oh, you poor dears. Then they went to court themselves and they filed a civil lawsuit. And the conclusion of the civil lawsuit was that James Earl Ray was innocent. At which point, of course, the government and the corporate media turned on them and said, oh, they're just trying to make money off of this. They're just increasing the pain for people, and just went on and on and on. But there was an article that came out today over in Zero Hedge calling for a reinvestigation of American assassinations, including, obviously, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and Senator Robert F. Kennedy. And apparently, this joint statement calling for these investigations was signed by Isaac Newton Ferris Jr., nephew of Reverend King and past president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Reverend James E. Lawson Jr., a close collaborator of Reverend King, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, children of the late senator. The declaration is also signed by a number of historians, journalists, lawyers, and other experts on the 4 major assassinations. And it sounds really good, but here is my problem. This government will never admit that they've done something wrong. Having a new formal investigation just gives the government a chance to polish up the lies and try and explain away the discrepancies. We, the people, know that we were lied to. That is enough. It's enough for me. We don't need another investigation. We have now reached the point where we have to decide if we, not to mention our children, are going to continue to live with a government that lies to us. And by the way, once again, I want to recommend to you the movie The Post. Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks. It's about the Pentagon Papers. It's a very well done movie. It's on cable right now. And it hails from a time back when the Washington Post really did real news. and did the job the way that it was supposed to be. And it illustrated that for 30 years, the U.S. government had been lying to the American people about what was going on in Indochina and Vietnam. And it took Daniel Ellsberg's copying off of the secret report on the real state of the war to break it out in the open. Now, if somebody is going to leak information about Martin Luther King from inside the government, or John F. Kennedy, or Malcolm X, or Robert F. Kennedy, that could kick things open. But at this point, I think we have to accept we know enough to know that we were lied to, and we don't really need to know anymore. It's time to start making some decisions about the future of this country, the future of our lives, and especially the future of the next generation. So speaking of lying, let's talk about BuzzFeed for a while. As you know, a while ago, BuzzFeed came on out with this story claiming that Michael Cohen had testified to Robert Mueller's investigation, that Donald Trump had ordered him to lie to Congress. And this story came on out, and everybody just went ballistic. The corporate media was out there saying, this is it. This is the beginning of the end of Donald Trump. He's going to be impeached over this. This is terrible. And Friday, Robert Mueller's office came on out and basically blew this story out of the water, saying it's absolutely not true. Michael Cohen said nothing of the sort. And at that point, the two reporters who had worked on this thing were trying to pass the buck back and forth, saying, oh, well, I was relying on what he was telling me. And, he said he'd seen evidence. I didn't see the evidence, but I went with him. And, of course, the rest of the corporate media that bought into this thing, that basically just seized it with such joy and ecstasy. Now they're in grief, and they're out there saying, oh, how could this have happened? Well, it happened because you forgot Basic Journalism 101, which is you never go with a story without independent corroboration. Meanwhile, the corporate media is out there trying to beg for forgiveness from the American people, saying, we're sorry we lied this one time. We won't do it again. Please come back and watch our channels in a pig's eye. BuzzFeed alone created this false report, which was based on anonymous sources. And much of the political class embraced the story without doubts because they wanted it to be true so much. The Democrats in Congress were out there saying, we're going to have investigations. And then you have all these so-called journalists and the corporate media who swallowed the report and republished it without trying to confirm it for themselves or find corroboration. And there's a little phrase that you need to look at when you're reading the news or listening to the news. And that's the caveat, if it's true. And that's basically something the lawyers have the corporate media say just to make sure they can't get sued for reporting false news. Boy, this is really, really bad. This is it. This is the end of Trump, if it's true. Now, it wasn't all that long ago that no respected journalist or news organization would dare go public with something unless they had enough evidence to reach the conclusion it was true. The bigger the story, the higher the threshold of necessary evidence. I mean, look how hard the Washington Post had to work to get the Watergate story out there before anybody else would cover the Watergate story. When they use that phrase, if it's true, they're basically admitting, we're not sure. This could be a complete piece of fake news. And speaking of fake news, early today on Fox and Friends, the Fox control room ran a graphic of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Underneath was written 1933 to 2019, making it look like she had passed away. Now, they pulled the graphic down very quickly. I can understand why they might have one prepared to go. But of course, Ginsburg is still alive and still recovering from her cancer surgery, and Fox News was forced to issue an on-air apology here. Now, there's one little bright spot in the corporate media, and it has to do over at the New York Times with this Michelle Alexander. And she wrote this article, Time to Break the Silence About Palestine. And she was out there saying she can't be quiet about Palestine any longer. She says progressives keep quiet about Palestine out of fears their careers will be ended. She can't do it anymore. That if Martin Luther King had the courage to speak out against the war in Vietnam, which drew the immediate wrath of the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover, that she had to have the courage to speak out about Palestine. And this could signal a bellwether where now the issue of Palestinian rights is now an open topic at the New York Times. So, of course, Israel advocates are already out there saying, oh, her piece, it's a strategic threat. It's shameful appropriation of Dr. King's memory. And, of course, it's anti-Semitic and it's Jew hate and so forth and so on. But a lot of people are reading that article. It's going viral, and maybe it's going to open up the story a little bit. Then we have this other embarrassment, and it has to do with this so-called confrontation between these Covington Catholic students and a Native American veteran. And the way it was edited and presented on the media made it look like these Covington Catholic students were harassing this Native American veteran. And again, oh, it's a bunch of white people, it's a bunch of Catholics. We can make them look bad. Let's go to broadcast, let's go to publication with this. And once again, they wound up with egg all over their collective faces. So if you do a little bit of digging, you find out these Catholic students didn't do anything. The Native American guy just walked up to them and started banging drums right in their face while a group of black activists hurled slurs and insults at them, trying to provoke them. It's exactly the opposite of how it was presented. Now, Nathan Phillips is supposedly this Native American radical activist who confronted those MAGA hat-wearing Catholic teens in the March for Life. Turns out he's an actor. He starred in a 2012 Skrillex video called Make It Bun Dem, which was about attacking the police. So he's a player. He's a convenient face that they can put in to stage these events. Now, the latest word is these Covington Catholic the high school itself may sue the corporate media outlets for spreading fake news. And apparently every single member of the media who defamed, slandered, and doxed the Covington boys will be served. And each and every tweet will be archived and turned over to the students' legal counsel. So they're fighting back, and good for them. But that's not going to placate the leftists. They want to believe. Forget about the facts. We want to believe here. Out in Hollywood, there's this producer, Jack Morrissey. He's known for projects like Beauty and the Beast and the Twilight Saga. He basically called for these high school Catholic boys to be fed into a wood chipper. And he just piled onto this hate-filled media frenzy. And again, if you look at the full video of the incident, the teens did nothing wrong. They were ambushed by these blacks calling them crackers, and the Native American Indian man is a far-left activist. Meanwhile, again, in Los Angeles, there's a disc jockey, Michael Buchanan. He goes by the stage name House Shoes. He's a Detroit-born hip-hop producer and DJ, currently living in Los Angeles, and he took to his Twitter account this weekend to call for the Covington Catholic children to be locked into the school and the school burned to the ground. He actually said that on Twitter. You want to know what the surprise is? Twitter says he didn't violate the rules, that it's perfectly okay for him to say that. Now, Stormy Daniels, maybe sensing another chance to get her name in the news media, wants to build a wall around the disgusting punks who taunted the Native American protester. Even when it's exposed as a lie, they keep pushing on it. They keep pushing on it. Meanwhile, Representative John Yarmuth is out there saying it's time to call for a ban on MAGA hats. He says, there's obviously something going on out there. We don't know what it is. We should just ban the wearing of MAGA hats until we can figure it out. Well, we know what's going on out there. The MAGA hats are being targeted by the anti-Trumpers, by the so-called resistance, of which there was a great deal involved in this Women's March. And Representative Yarmuth seems to forget we have something here called the First Amendment, which allows us to wear hats with pretty much anything that we want on them, including those little tiny ear tufts that were on all the women's hats. And in a final coup de grace for the fake media, meaning the corporate media, remember that story that came on out about this Russian hooker living in Thailand who got arrested? But we got to take a break for commercials. I'll come back to this after these words from our sponsors.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go to the phones here to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, when are the missiles on the way? Can we keep not deal with this crap anymore? My God, my MAGA, teen wearing MAGA hat, harasses Native American elder. It's on the same script on all the channels: Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. Oh my God! He was definitely an actor. The kid, did you watch the video? He just stands there with this no grit. I mean, it was just a setup.
Yes, it was a setup.
I mean, who's hiring these people, Mike? You know, is this like another George Soros deep state operation at this point? I mean, my God, when is this going to end? You know, everybody with a MAGA hat's evil, I guess.
I'm very concerned it's going to end in violence in the streets, and I would like to find some way to prevent that from happening.
It's just between that, Mike, and then, you know, BuzzFeed, you know, which is who owns BuzzFeed, Mike? Do we even know, like, who owns this organization? Is it a front? You know,
I don't know, but I know that they got a lot of funding from other corporate media, and I think there's an article about that on whatreallyhappened.com.
I just don't know how much more the American people can take of this crap. You know, I mean, it was on every station, this MAGA thing, and I just learned about it earlier. Hey, Mike, did you hear about the buses of Homeland Security dropping off more illegal aliens in Texas?
No, I hadn't, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and then the woman is videotaping it. They could have called the police on the woman videotaping it. These either contractors for the Department of Homeland Security, and then in the video you can see when they're bringing people up the bus, they got these sheets up so you can't see. I mean, it's surreal. I mean, what's going on here already? You know, I mean, how much more of this crap are we going to take? You know, I mean, is Trump's obviously not running Homeland Security or the country, it seems at this point, because they wouldn't pull this crap if he was running it, right?
Well, I got to tell you, it does feel like we're really seeing the battle, if you will, between the nationalists and the globalists really start to heat on up. And I think the indication of just how worried the elites are right now is both their reaction to the yellow vests, which, as far as the corporate media is concerned, to just try and ignore them, and the fact that Soros just transferred another $18 billion with a B of his personal fortune into his Open Society Foundation. That's a lot of money and a lot of mischief that can be done with it.
Mike, does it seem like we're losing?
I don't know.
Seems like we're losing.
I don't know if there's a win or a lose, but it does feel like civilization is breaking down. It's fragmenting rather badly.
All right, Mike, have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. All right, getting on back to the story. Another media fail. There was this story a while ago about this Russian hooker in Thailand named Nastya Rybka, and she was organizing what were called sex training classes in Thailand, which were actually just group sex parties that you paid to participate in. So she got arrested for prostitution. She was thrown in jail, at which point she came on out and said that she could provide the FBI data on Trump-Russia collusion. And apparently somebody inside the U.S. government pulled some strings, and she has been given a suspended sentence and released for time served, at which point she and her partner are being deported to Russia, and now she's gone public saying she just made it up. She made it up knowing that it would help her get out of jail. And when the story came out, yeah, the media ran with it. Oh, yes, we've got another witness. We've got a Trump-Russia collusion witness. Who cares if she's a hooker? We have to believe her. We should never doubt. Well, anyway, we got to take another break for commercials. We have another caller waiting on the line, and we'll be right back.
Hi, Michael. The music doesn't trigger until 29:14.
My mistake. I misread the clock. My bad. Okay. there has been a major escalation in Syria, and Israel has announced, which is unusual, that its jets struck Iranian military targets in Syria early today. And Israel is saying the targets included munition storage facilities, an intelligence site, and a military training camps. Now, the strikes were supposedly in response to a surface-to-surface rocket that Iranian forces fired toward Israel yesterday, which was in turn a response to a daylight air raid against the Damascus International Airport. So this is spinning out of control. Now we'll be back in a few minutes.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. As most of you know, my regular listeners, I offer energy cleaners for sale at my website. If you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, go to my website, thelibertyman.com, educate yourself about these marvelous healing devices. We focus on pain mitigation and getting a great night's sleep. Arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, doesn't matter. Keep in mind, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. Energy Cleaner is $285, shipping included to American zip codes. You can educate yourself all about the Energy Cleaner right there at my website, the patent application, the wonderful testimonials. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the Energy Cleaner. Now, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. I have a toll-free order line, or you can order it right at my website at thelibertyman.com. That toll-free order line is 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Thank you.
The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights limits the government's power by ensuring the freedom of speech and preserving the rights of the people. Every day that passes, our rights gradually slip away. It's time to take a stand and let the government know we're tired of losing our rights. LibertyStickers.com will allow you to express your rights and allow millions of people to see you stand up for what you believe in. LibertyStickers.com carries the largest selection of bumper stickers online, ranging from political to humorous, and is your #1 source for Ron Paul for President stickers. As always, you can find your favorite stickers that protest the war and the president. Don't see what you're looking for? Liberty Stickers will custom make stickers that will let you get your message across for all Americans to see. Go to LibertyStickers.com and see pre-made stickers that will get everyone talking. That's LibertyStickers.com, or call 877-873-9626. Liberty Stickers, the world's most dangerous stickers.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We've got a caller on the line. Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, you know, I don't know what video everybody else has seen. so I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is the 1 hour, 46-minute video that I watched. And, you know, I only made it up until about the 1 hour, the 1 hour, 46-minute video that I watched. And I've only made it through about 1 hour and 2 minutes of it up until this point. And, you know, here's what I take from this whole deal. First of all, it was these Indians who approached a bunch of blacks, calling themselves the Black Hebrew Israelites,
Yes.
who were cursing, throwing racial slurs, anti-homo sentiment, and all this. At the 5.5-minute mark, that's when the black guys calling themselves the Black Hebrew Israelites begin to try to deflect all of the attention away from them and onto a group of white teenage boys who happen to be there in Washington for the March for Life,
Yes.
which they do regularly, and that's where they're dropped off and they're picked up. And these were all a bunch of teenagers from Covington Catholic High School who were just simply waiting to be picked up. And, I mean, I heard everything from that to, at one point the guy says, here's where we got another problem here. We got women trying to step up and do, well, now he's going into sexist comments. And then, you know, then at about the 12-minute mark is when he begins throwing out physical threats about punching people and starts yelling at other black people because these other black people are confronting them and not the white teens, calling them Uncle Tom, Sambo, and just more threats to punch people. And, I mean, it's just absolutely crazy up to the point where he starts talking about America's going to be destroyed by nuclear and all this kind of. And so what I take from this is a bunch of crazy damn black people losing their flipping mind in the middle of Washington. And I mean, it just, and these poor teenagers are caught in the middle of this, trying to figure out exactly what planet they're on.
Yeah. I mean, it was obviously a setup here, and what's really interesting, I just got an email in my box I want to read here, and it says, as a Native American, I am angry that once again we are being used as a prop to start a fight. I didn't know who that guy was that started banging the drum. I don't even know what the protest was about. Well, I'm an elder too, and I'm afraid that the left will not be happy until blood is running in the streets. I remember the saying during the Vietnam War, what if they gave a war and no one came? Same could be said for these phony protests. And that's a very, very good observation. And of course, we know now that this guy who started the ruckus, this so-called Native American with his drum, he's a paid political activist, and he's appeared in films before. Yeah. He's a hired gun. And it was a setup to try and demonize the Catholics, to try and demonize white people in general, and of course to keep mounting pressure against the pro-life movement in the face of these ever more ridiculous and stringent calls for completely wide open abortion. In fact, that one they're talking about in New York about legalizing abortion right up to the point of birth. I mean, that to me is obscene.
I know. And then, you know, and what really makes this bad, Mike, and this is where I really begin to have problems, you know, is when we've got members of Congress now talking about wanting to ban these MAGA hats until they can figure out just exactly what's going on here. Wait a minute. Now come the clothing police? I mean, are you absolutely out of your flipping mind? You know, I say we ban Congress.
You're not going to get any opposition from me. I mean, anybody who's out there saying that the MAGA hat should be banned needs to go back and read that Bill of Rights.
Yeah, because in the Ninth Amendment says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage or retain by the people. That means the right to wear whatever you want to wear, whatever clothing you want to wear. It's your right, your most fundamental right to choose for yourself. So there you go, the Ninth Amendment. And let's not forget the 10th Amendment, where the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by the states, or reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. Plain and simple. Your job, Mr. Senator, Mr. Congressman, Mr. and Mrs. whatever, is stated very clear in the Constitution. It's not to dictate to us what we can and cannot wear. You're simple to protect and defend the Constitution from all threats, foreign and domestic. End of discussion.
You know, it's kind of interesting because a long time ago, that oath of office had an additional line in it. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to same.
Right.
And isn't it kind of interesting that that particular phrase has been taken out of the oath?
Yeah. In fact, that's in the oath that I took when I joined the Army. I remember that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Hey, thanks, Mike, and we'll talk to you in no time.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jim in Chicago. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I grew up in the 60s and 70s like you did. Today, I don't recognize this country. When I was growing up, we had leaders who had a moral conscience. We had people who also had a moral conscience and wanted to come together. And also, we had a media that was telling the truth or were trying to tell the truth. Today, the country is so divided. We had journalists who are basically paid off or prostituting themselves. And I don't see any direction for America except for down. I mean, we're in moral.
I agree.
We're very divided. It seems like there's more racism today than ever before. It's just kind of sad. I know Dr. King would be, turning over in his grave because everything that he fought for has basically gone by the wayside. And people who are basically trying to pimp off his legacy, they're out for themselves. And it's really, really kind of sad.
It is sad. It is sad. I mean, I have, I like you. I have memories of what this country was like, especially when I was growing up in New England farmland, and to see the country tearing itself apart this way, which I think is the best description we can have for it. You have all these different factions. They've all become very fanatical in their desires and beliefs. There's no room for compromise. And so, yeah, I see, unfortunately, a tremendous potential for violence in the streets. We've already had violence in the streets, but I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Well, not only that, though, the shutdown does not help the situation. I'll tell you that.
Nope, it doesn't.
So, but I don't know. I'm just very, very disappointed, and I don't know. I think the fact that I remember how things used to be. Back in the 60s and 70s, where people wanted to come together, and now it's just the opposite. So, well, Michael, you take care. God bless.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot, Jim. And you need to remember that even when people want to come together, there are always political interests who see their own profitability in keeping people split apart. And one of the things that I remember was the FBI's COINTELPRO program, which, along with targeting the anti-Vietnam War movement, was deliberately trying to build racial tension between blacks and whites. And they did a lot of really dirty tricks, of which the most infamous is the Black Panther coloring book, where they came up with this coloring book showing black people killing white police officers, and they just spread it all around and say, see, this is what the Black Panthers are after. And the corporate media just sort of fed that whole line to basically make Americans so scared of black people that they wouldn't listen to the blacks' legitimate grievances, like why are we being put on the front lines in Vietnam, and the white kids, for the most part, are in those rear echelon areas. And that was also one of the reasons why Martin Luther King was such a threat to the government, because he was standing against the war in Vietnam. He was starting to tell young black people to find some way to resist that draft. And he had the charisma where he could have derailed the war in Vietnam. And so that was a big reason why he was such a threat to the system.
I would agree. This is something I want to mention, and I should have mentioned a second ago. With all these illegals and the immigration problems that's going on, who is it mainly hurting quite a bit are the blacks in America. And no one really wants to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, for the most part, blacks in America are doing about as well as anybody else. And of course, you've got, again, the race baiters are out there saying, oh, no, the white people are doing much better. And, it's time for slavery reparations. And, you black people, you're all bunches of free stuff. And if you vote Democratic, we'll make sure that you get it. We're heading into Zimbabwe territory with that kind of rhetoric.
No kidding. So, well, Michael, you take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open again here. So, getting on back to Israel and Syria, Israel launched a major attack at what they're describing as Iranian military targets in Syria earlier today. And this is a very rare departure. Israel normally does not announce or even admit after the fact that they've done this. But they came on out and said, we're going to strike a blow against Iran. And again, there was a little tit for tat that started apparently with Israel's daylight raid near the Damascus International Airport. This prompted a surface-to-surface rocket firing from Syria back toward Israel. Iron Dome shot it down, and Israel just went and hauled off on all of these facilities here. Now, there is apparently a massive bomb blast in Damascus. Was originally reported as possible terrorism. No terrorist group has taken credit for it, from which I would deduce that it might have been an errant Israeli missile. But apparently the explosion targeted this military checkpoint in an area where the nearby roads were closed. Now, I want to make an important point here. Israel's trying to get away with doing what they're doing by saying, oh, we're only hitting Iranian targets. Well, all those Israeli missiles that are successfully intercepted by Syria's air defense forces, they still come down somewhere, and they still blow something up. And even if these are Iranian facilities, this is still Syrian sovereign territory. And I have to tell you, I am admiring President Bashar al-Assad and President Vladimir Putin at the restraint they are showing to try and keep this situation from going out of control. But it looks like Israel really wants to crank this up. And the reason for the sudden rush to start announcing and flinging weapons all over the place, which, by the way, you've paid for, apparently it's leaked on out that Israel's Attorney General, Avichai Mordeblit, has in fact decided he will file bribery charges against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Case 4000, the so-called Besek Walia affair. This was reported on Israel's Ulpan Slisha news program on Friday night. This dovetails with a report that we had from last Friday saying that Netanyahu was trying to negotiate with the AG to keep the indictments from being handed down prior to the April election. So Netanyahu needs a good war as a distraction from all of this. Now, getting on back to Syria, as you know, just when Trump said, I'm pulling the troops out, there was this supposed suicide bombing that killed a lot of people, including 4 service members. And this was immediately seized on by all the war hawks as why we have to stay in Syria. And again, I question the claim that ISIS was behind this. ISIS wants the United States to leave. So when the United States says we're going home, why would ISIS do anything to change that? This was clearly a false flag. Over in the northeastern part of Syria, the Democratic Federation of Northern Syria, which is a group that was established by U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces to try and legalize and legitimize their control over Syria. They have now come on out releasing a 10-point long list of demands to the Damascus government. Apparently, they want to start acting like they are already a country, but the demands include more rights to the minorities, autonomous administration of their part of Syria, and their own independent foreign policy. So they're at least talking, but I don't think Assad is going to go along with that because the Kurds have just been such a pain in the Okole for a long time. And for those of you who don't speak Hawaiian, Okole is what you're sitting on, and I do not mean the office chair here. Over in the Kerch Straits, there's been another incident. It made the headlines briefly. 2 ships caught on fire in the Kerch Strait. One of them was rocked by a major explosion. Several people were killed. There are now 10 rescue ships picking up the sailors and looking for survivors. The official story at this time is that there was a fuel transfer going on and somebody violated safety rules and basically set off the blast. So it wasn't Russia, wasn't Crimea, wasn't the United States. It's just an industrial accident and a doozy. Down in Greece, there is a major protest going on in Athens against the Macedonia name change deal. Now, for those of you a little late to the table on here, as it turns out, there are 2 countries calling themselves Macedonia, which can lead to a certain amount of confusion. So there was this deal worked out where one of the countries was going to change their name, and apparently the people are not at all happy. They want to be known as Macedonia. You, other country, you change. As you're already aware, Trump has come on out with a new missile defense plan, which will be a bonanza for political patronage in Washington. Huge bonus for the military-industrial complex. And he's basically pushing efforts for a ballistic missile defense shield, including the introduction of space-based weapons. And this is Eisenhower's nightmare writ large. The military-industrial complex. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Hi folks, CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Extendivite, made from garlic, cayenne, bilberry, hawthorn, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle, feeds our body with the nutrients we need to keep healthy. Just listen to what Arthur had to say.
I was just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about, 10 years ago after I had congestive heart failure. And it fixed me up and got me going for the last 10 years. Lately, I've been having heart trouble again, so I placed another order because this was the only thing that ever worked. I just wanted to let you know that you have a great product. Thank you very much.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, the Smithsonian, in their magazine, has put out a map, which is linked to whatreallyhappened.com, and it shows the U.S. military is currently operating in over 40% of the world's countries. And it's global. It is a world war. Americans are actively engaged in combat, they call it countering terrorism, in 80 nations on 6 continents. Anyway, over in Great Britain, it's been admitted that 1/3 of the Royal Air Force planes can't fly, including dozens of their 80 million pound Typhoon jets. Some 142 jets out of 434 aircraft are mothballed or being repaired. The planes belong to the Air Force's sustainment fleet rather than the forwarded fleet, which is ready for deployment. And apparently among the jets unable to fly include 55 out of 156 Typhoons, which have been part of bombing raids on ISIS. Boy, those things do wear out rather fast here. All right, so let's talk about the Yellow Vests. They're in their 10th week of the protests. They're battling tear gas and very aggressive riot police officers who are very obviously not paying attention to French President Emmanuel Macron's call for a national debate. So he's up there trying to take the high moral ground while the police are out there with the clubs just clubbing anybody with a yellow vest here. And the corporate media is basically ignoring the size and scope of the protests. The reason for that is very simple. They don't want you slaves to get uppity ideas. But the fact of the matter is the yellow vest movement has gone global. And among the countries where there are yellow vest protests, Bulgaria, Canada, Egypt, Finland, Germany, Iraq, Ireland, even in Israel, Italy, the Netherlands, Pakistan, Poland, Portugal, Russia, Serbia, Taiwan, Tunisia, and the United Kingdom. Now, the United States did not make that list, and I'm not sure why, because I'm aware that there have been yellow vest protests at several places within the United States. It may be that if it wasn't picked up on corporate news, whoever made this list simply missed it. But there have been yellow vest protests in this country. They're being ignored. Very interesting article over here in Zero Hedge. The yellow vests are unstoppable, and now the elites are afraid. And the yellow vests have rattled the French establishment, not to mention the globalists. We're now into 10 weeks. Crowds ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands have been taking to the streets every single weekend across all of France. They've had enormous success extracting major concessions from the government, and they continue to march. The latest news is French firefighters are now marching with the yellow vests. So there's the solidarity. And it reminds me of this statement by John Basil Barnhill. It's very often misattributed to Thomas Jefferson. Where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty. We're going to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back.
Don't regret growing old. It's a privilege denied to many. Heart disease is taking our youth from us. Young people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond are dying needlessly. One of the hardest messages I've ever had to deliver is to convince people that something natural like Extendivite should be taken as a preventative measure. I'm sure you heard an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Extendivite is that ounce. Take Extendivite for 1 year and see what your doctor has to say and how much better you feel. Herbs take time to address the problem. It took years of life to have a problem. Give Extendivite 1 year to fix the problem. Don't wait until it's too late. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or visit us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Okay, now, as you know, the government is still partially shut down, and everybody's grandstanding on each side. And over at the Fox News channel, Jeanine Pirro just hammered Pelosi during the opening monologue segment and basically came on out and said it's very obvious that Pelosi and congressional Democrats care more about illegal immigrants than Americans. Pirro described Pelosi as a hypocrite and a political operative. She chastised Pelosi for taking a vacation in Hawaii while Trump was staying in D.C. to try and work out a compromise. Chastised the Democrats who went down to Puerto Rico during the shutdown and for planning this little jaunt to Europe while the federal employees are looking under their seat cushions for change to go buy a loaf of bread. Let them eat cake, says Pelosi here. Now, Ted Cruz is out there saying that what lies behind Nancy Pelosi's scheme regarding the State of the Union is that she wants to shut down President Trump's most direct line of communication with the American people. Right now, the corporate media is filtering everything coming out of the White House, and it's only a matter of time before we start seeing filters on Twitter. The State of the Union speech is where the president gets to come on out. He has the microphone and the podium, and he gets to stand there and say, this is what's really going on. And Pelosi doesn't want you to know, because she knows that Trump is going to come on out and talk about the necessity of the border wall. He's going to chastise Pelosi and Schumer for having voted for a border wall only 5 years ago. And she wants to prevent that. This is pure politics. Now, remember, Pelosi tried to justify this saying, oh, there was a security problem. You know, we couldn't guarantee the security of the president and members of Congress, you know, with the shutdown here. And, of course, both the Secret Service and the Department of Homeland Security said that's completely, utterly nonsense. The Capitol building will be fully secure for the State of the Union. Now it's come on out that Pelosi never even asked the Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security if there might be a security threat. She just made it up out of thin air. Oh, let's see, we need an excuse. Oh, we'll just say it's a security risk here. And behind all this noise, behind all BuzzFeed, the MAGA kid, the Russian hooker in Thailand here, we need to remember one of the most revealing stories from last week. Bruce Ohr told the Department of Justice the Christopher Steele dossier was pure bovine excrement. And yet Sally Yates and James Comey ran with it anyhow to spy on Trump. Apparently, truth has become such a valuable commodity that the government is economizing it. And that seems to be what's going on here, not just within the government, but the corporate media. Forget about the truth. Forget about the facts. Just come up with a spectacular lie. Come up with a lie that's just so out there, people will just say, oh, I want to believe it. I want to believe it. That's pure propaganda here. Over in the House of Representatives, they've introduced a bill, H.R. 204, the American Sovereignty Restoration Act of 2019, which calls for the U.S. to withdraw from the United Nations. And I rather think that this is not going to happen, if for no other reason that Israel is going to call all their pet Congress critics and say, no, don't vote for this. We need the United States in the UN to exercise their Security Council veto so that we can go on bombing Palestinians with impunity. So this one's not going to go anywhere. Presidents always like to talk about their legacy. How will history remember me? And they expend a great deal of effort trying to polish their reputation and if anything, to jumpstart history in their favor. But there's an article over in Vanity Fair, and basically it says that up-and-coming Democrats, the new Democrats, are looking at his legacy with some objectivity. And they're saying that Obama was, in fact, a bad president. Here's a good one. Ben Carson has been digging into funding, and he's discovered that in the second term of the Obama-Clinton administration, that money was simply disappearing. And Ben Carson has discovered that Barack Obama mismanaged $516 billion in taxpayer funds. That's $500 billion that just sort of came and went through the White House. Nobody's going to talk about it. The media is mum. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. To nobody's surprise here, research by the University of Sheffield has revealed that more than 3/4 of people are very dissatisfied with political parties, and has identified 7 major qualities people want to see in parties today. Dissatisfaction is high across all areas. Highest of all, of course, is the failure to deliver promises. 87% of respondents in the study say the political parties don't do this very well. The parties are described as undemocratic, self-interested, and divided. And that certainly is very, very true. Now, as you know, the 2020 election campaign is already started. We just barely got out of the midterms here. And apparently, Democrats in the House are trying to pass a bill, supposedly to help reform the election system. But in actuality, it's basically pushing for the advantages the Democrats have. This bill, it's called For the People Act, or H.R. 1, would require all 50 states to adopt automatic voter registration based on federal databases such as those on food stamps. Now, not everybody on the food stamp program is a legal American citizen and entitled to vote. This H.R. 1 also mandates looser rules governing provisional ballots. 2 weeks of early voting, prohibits restrictions on votings by mail, and limits the ability for states to remove voters from rolls. They're basically trying to legalize all of the little dirty tricks that they use. Now, they didn't quite get into legalizing democratic vote harvesting, but a recent op-ed in the Wall Street Journal said, give the Democrats time. They want to change the very nature of our election system so they can go on stealing elections. We're going to be a one-party country, just like the former Soviet Union was. Meanwhile, over in Davos, the global elites are gathering together for the World Economic Forum and just upset that things aren't going the way they want, that globalism is faltering, that the people are waking up and they're not happy with the way they're being enslaved. Now, the wealth of the 12 richest Davos billionaires increased by $175 billion in the last 10 years. And basically, Davos is where the world's richest, most powerful financiers, politicians, artists, and celebrities, they fly in on their private jets surrounded by bodyguards, and they sit down to discuss the world's ills, which for the most part they've created. And they're still out there pushing the global warming hype, which seems to ignore the carbon emissions from the private jets. And they're saying that the only way global warming can be saved is by paying a major bank billions in carbon credit commissions, not to mention social upheaval and populist anger. It was described as a reunion for the people who broke the world. I think that's a good description. Now, near Davos, there is a ski resort. And apparently up at the ski resort, all of these limousines from all of these World Economic Forum attendees are causing huge traffic problems. And the locals are out there saying, why are they doing this? You know, why don't they just take public transportation the way Swiss central bankers and government ministers do? And that's a very, very good question. Now, as you know, hardly anybody from the U.S. government went to Davos. Trump pulled the plug on that. Theresa May decided not to attend Davos, and apparently doesn't want to be reminded of the speech she made 2 years ago about how Brexit was going to be wonderful and was giving Britain a great opportunity to step up to a new leadership role. So I guess she decided to basically stay home and not worry about that. Okay, let's talk about the economic news. As you know, Retail-mageddon is progressing, and it's getting worse, and they're still trying to put the blame on online sales. But the bottom line is the ordinary working class, middle class population is tapped out for money. People are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have any savings. They're just barely getting by. So, of course, they don't have money to go buy stuff. They don't buy something until they really, really need it. And for a retail industry, which over the last several decades basically pushed for overconsumption as the means to profitability, that is a major disaster. And apparently over at JCPenney, they're in serious trouble. They may be following Sears down the economic tube. Sales are falling. And apparently they still have a handful of senior positions that are remaining vacant. They can't find people to come on in and take those jobs. Which, let's be honest, that's like Captain E.J. Smith, you know, wanting to hire somebody onto the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. Who would take that job? Another story out here. This is in the Daily Mail, and you've probably noticed this already. It's a phenomenon called shrinkflation. And that's where, in order to not increase prices on products to an alarming degree, the products themselves are made slightly smaller, and it's done a little bit over time in the hope you won't notice, but people are noticing it. And apparently there was a study that found 206 products, including chocolate bars, bread, and cereal, have gotten smaller since 2015. And it's got nothing to do with Brexit. It has to do with getting more money out of the people for less product. Now, a while ago, I don't know if it's still there or not, but somebody who would like spend his entire life working at McDonald's had started collecting the packaging for the Big Mac when it first came out. And every time there was a new revision, he would get that. And he put up a website where you could see the history of the Big Mac packaging over time. And yes, over time it got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Let's talk about immigration. Up in the liberal utopia of Seattle, some of the areas there have seen a 31% increase in crime just last year. Out in Los Angeles, the school district, the cost of educating the illegal immigrants and their children is costing hundreds of millions of dollars per year, could even be above $1 billion, according to experts. And this, of course, is coming on out while they're having a teacher strike, where the teachers are saying there isn't enough support for these huge classes. They're protesting not just about teacher pay, but classroom size, support staff, and okay. So it's costing a huge amount of money. Okay, we got a caller waiting on the line here. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You were saying earlier about politicians keeping their promises.
Yeah.
I think politicians just shouldn't lie. This should be against the law. I mean, we're paying them, right?
Well, yeah, but we don't pay them as much as the corporations do. Politicians consider it their right to lie. They consider it a tool of statecraft. And, you know, it's an old cliche. How do you tell when a politician's lying? Well, their lips are moving. And there have even been politicians who have claimed that they have a First Amendment right to lie. I mean, that's how absurd it really is.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where it's just silly. The system can't be fixed.
No,
it just can't be.
We're going to have to let it tear itself apart. Now, interestingly enough, some years ago, there was the development of a new lie detection system called a voice stress analyzer, and I got to see one of the pro units that the CIA was using, and it was very, very good. And then they started being put on out to the marketplaces like Sharper Image, and they were all the rage. And this one is proving to be very accurate when I use it on politicians' TV speeches. But for some reason, voice stress analyzers are no longer available to consumers. They just wanted that to go away. You know, don't be testing me with a machine to see if I'm telling you the truth. Just believe I'm telling you the truth. I wouldn't lie to you. I'm your leader.
Exactly. Trust me, I'm a banker. You know, Mike, there was a report today that came out and said the top 26 or 27 richest people in the world, and I guess that would be by Forbes, not the real rich people, but, you know, Bezos and those guys, right, have as much wealth as the bottom 3.8 billion. That's insane. That is feudalism. It's beyond fixing.
You're absolutely right.
It can't be fixed.
No, it can't be. It's going to have
Sandy
it's going to have to collapse.
Has a point. Yep. Sandy has a point. But the point is, we should go back to before Reagan even got in power. And not only in your country, but in the country I live in, too. I mean, our tax rates are higher, but in the United States, I mean, you know, I mean, we're the wealthiest country in the world.
Yeah,
and
but that
people
wealth
still
is
think
all in the hands
that
of just a very, very few people. And, you know, you look at some of our inner cities like Baltimore, and you compare them with cities in other parts of the world, you'll realize that we are descending into third world status for the vast majority of the population. I mean, Soros has still got his mansion, Zuckerberg's got his little plantation, for lack of a better word, out there in Kauai. But for the vast majority of the American people, their standard of living has been in decline for more than 30 years, and it is, in fact, by design.
Yep. Ever since 1971, when Nixon took, you know, the United States and basically the whole world off of the gold standard. There's nothing holding the bankers back now.
Nope.
And now they want carbon credits, right?
Yeah, they want to play the carbon credit thing. It's just, it's ridiculous.
Well,
if at first, you know, it's one hoax after the next hoax, after the next lie, after the next fraud, after the next spin, and it really is an atrocious situation.
That's it. I mean, it's as soon as something is for sale, that's it. That's where they got you, and especially if you need that one thing.
Yeah.
It could be anything. It could be, it could be some kind of medical procedure. It could be, dialysis. It could be insulin. I mean, there's another big one, insulin. How much is insulin really worth, Mike?
I
It's worth
don't
everything
really
to people
know,
that
but
need it.
we already know that, the American medical industrial complex is all about the money. And procedures and treatments in this country can cost 10 times what they go for in other parts of the world, where very often you're actually going to get better quality care anyway.
Yeah, sometimes. But, the thing is with the United States, and I know this because I live in Canada, is you can get it right away. Right? There's no waiting in line.
That's not true. It took us 3 months to get Claire in to see a doctor after she fractured her back. Anyway, listen, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, and we'll be back with another caller after these few words.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs. Memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day, chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go right back to the phones here. To Al in West Virginia. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael.
I was just wanting to mention something. You're exactly right. It's all about the money.
Yes.
So if the government shut down, why should we be paying taxes, right?
Well, I think there's a move in Congress for what's called a no budget, no salary bill, because members of Congress are still getting their paychecks. And maybe if they too were on furlough, they might move a little more rapidly to end this situation.
Exactly my thoughts right there. Whenever they shut down the government, they should shut down the commission of their commission, so that the Congress and the senators and everybody else doesn't get paid. That's the way to do that.
I would agree.
Instead, they get paid for life. They get paid for life, don't they? They spend, 2 years in there, or 1 or 2 years, and then they get paid for life?
Well, no, actually, how much they get paid depends on how many years of service, as well as the seniority of their positions. It's a very complicated formula. It's a drastic overstatement to say that they're in Congress for 2 years and they get a lifetime pension. If you're only in Congress for 2 years, you get a little something, but it's not a huge amount. For people who are in Congress for like 20 or 30 years, yeah, they do.
Oh, I didn't know that. I missed that somewhere when I was reading in law there somehow. But anyhow, I say everybody, the way to stop all this stuff that's going on is just quit paying taxes. Just refuse. They don't have enough prisons to put all of us in.
Well, if everybody were to quit paying taxes all at once, it would work. But, it's a decision everybody has to kind of make on their own. And for those individuals who, as individuals, refuse to pay their taxes, the government's going to come after you and make a horrible example of you.
Oh, I understand that, but it's no different than a civil war,
I mean, look what they did to Willie Nelson
that would be
and Wesley Snipes.
But they didn't have enough other people doing it with them. But anyhow, if that would be the softest way that I know to combat them without going to arms. Before you do go to arms, would be just shut them off.
Well, it's a good suggestion. We could boycott the government and claim it's our First Amendment right to do so. But again, from where I sit, this government is already tearing itself apart. And I think ultimately we're going to see a Soviet Union-style collapse. And it's going to be rough after that while we form a new country. We're going to have to look after each other, especially all those people who are dependent on Social Security or all the other government entitlement programs. Care for those people is probably going to have to fall to the local level, to charities, churches, so forth and so on, and just the generosity of people in the neighborhood. We could see the neighborhoods rebuild.
That is it. We you know what's funny about that right there? I took care of, in my household, I have a big house, and my family, I was raised this way. In my family, we always took care of the elderly.
Yes.
And we had 5 people that passed away as they got older, and my father did want to go to a rest home. I think he just done it. Well, actually, he didn't go to a rest home. He went to the VA hospital and passed away there, but for another hospital. I'm sorry, it wasn't a VA. It was another hospital, but he didn't want to. For some reason, he didn't want to die here at home. He knew he was dying. We all knew what was going on.
Yes.
But anyhow, all the other elderlies we kept here, and my mother. We all let them make their own decision. Do you want to go to a rest home, or do you want to be stayed here? Stay here and your family take care of you. And they chose to stay here, and I said, well, they wiped my butt when I was a kid. I can damn sure take care of them.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that was certainly
happened.
that was certainly the style I was raised with. That people would have their parents in their homes or very close to them and just look after them. But unfortunately, in our entitlement society, there are a lot of elderly people who do not have supportive families, and they're dependent on that revenue stream coming in from the government, which, again, Social Security is a hollow shell. Starting with President Clinton, vast amounts of cash have been borrowed out of it and replaced with special issue treasury bonds, which the government is apparently not in a position to actually redeem anytime in the near future. And so you're always hearing about the Social Security crisis. That's basically it. And that means that when this government tears itself apart, which is what I think is coming, we are going to have that commitment that we're going to look after each other and take care of each other. Anyway, Al, thank you for the phone call. We got to take another break for commercials, and we have another caller waiting on the line.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective, and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MigraLief migraine formula. MigraLief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MigraLief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354, or visit MIG911.com.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Mountain Man calling from Illinois. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. I liked your previous caller. That's exactly the kind of execution that we need to do. I don't like anything that resembles or aims toward violence, which they've got the upper hand.
Yes.
Okay, but there are things that we can do, like the previous caller said, that we can do, and we should be encouraged that there are things that we can do against what we see. The discouragement is in the. I don't know what it is about what you present and how you present it. It's not as discouraging as other shows on RBN, and so I continue to listen. Although there is a little bit of discouragement. What I need to do is find from other people. The guy that previously called, a large house, yeah, I don't, personally, I don't have that. It doesn't sound like you've got that either, but
no.
Yeah, don't you wish? But the point is there are things that we can do outside of the regular. In other words, I don't need to establish more confrontation with the laws that exist. In other words, my ability to wear a MAGA hat may be crimped, and that's fine. I don't need to wear a MAGA hat. Little things like that. I don't need to flaunt my rights. I need to live within the rights that they are taking away. And then there are things that we can do beyond that, outside that. And those are good things. Second Amendment rights. Man, if you can do it, great. Whatever. And those are good. Like the one radio show host here says, the Second Amendment establishes, holds all the other rights that we've got there.
Exactly.
Okay, and so we don't need to what do you want to call it? Stand there, stamp our feet. I've got a right. I don't want to stand there like these people did. And there's a reality to what it is that Martin Luther. One line I heard today, which was very good, from some guy in Memphis. The Memphians. I like that term. The Memphians. What King did and what he said is very good. We don't need to ride the bus in dishonor. We can walk with honor. Those are the kind of things we need to do. What does that involve? You're going to get somebody that's going to call, and I'm going to latch onto that. But one guy called last week in response to what I was saying, and he said he, again, a guy with some land, and he learned how to make an antenna out of the aluminum from beach chairs. Took him 100 hours to hammer it together, and he's rebroadcasting RBN in his neighborhood, which is, it's going to be property, and which is wonderful. Those are the kind of things I love. And the previous caller, having his house full of people, wonderful stuff. And I'm not going to explain what I do because I want to stay under the wire, and I don't want to flaunt or demand rights. And we've got to be encouraged by each other that way. I'm encouraged by the antenna, number one. I'm encouraged by the guy that put up his elderly people in his house. Grand.
Well, ordinary people, ordinary Americans basically are good people. They get driven to these extreme violent positions by the politicians. And the purpose of this show, of course, is education. And the most important thing that we all need to educate our friends about right now is that you're being lied to by the corporate media, by the government. There are things happening that you are not being told, and that you need to be responsible enough to go on out and start digging to find out the truth of what's happening in the world. Excuse me, I got a hiccup. And as far as the gentleman with the antenna, I've been made aware that this show is kind of the darling of the Part 15 hobby transmitters across the country. And to all of you running such rebroadcasts, my deepest gratitude and that of RBN.
Really, and see, those are the things that, and those are two large things. I'm not that large. I don't think you're that large, but the small guys can do things, and we can talk about it. Like, for instance, I don't require a lot of money if I eat oatmeal every morning. I don't require a lot of money if I eat beans. I mean, there are things that are very practical, very nutritious, and people have lived with forever. Okay,
Yes.
And those are the things that we need to do against the things that speak about my rights. I don't want to be, the guy from Chicago. I mean, I was here too. When when the cars were turned over, that wasn't me, that wasn't us. But I didn't like the war. I was going to go down and see that. I don't know what kept me from doing that. Thank goodness, but I didn't. But I mean, the point is we can do things. That's not the kind of things we want to do. I don't want to be participating in blood in the streets.
Well, unfortunately, something that is a reality of any political demonstration are agent provocateurs. And that
There
is,
you go.
you'll be having a peaceful march to make your point, and the government will send in people undercover to cause a ruckus and commit violence so the corporate media can turn around and say, oh, look at those horrible people. They talk about peace, and yet they're breaking store windows. We were talking earlier about the FBI's COINTELPRO program. They pulled that on the Vietnam movement with that protest at Disneyland that was turned violent by undercover FBI informants. It was called The Day the Yippies Took Over Disneyland. And when Congress was forced to hold hearings on COINTELPRO, it came on out. It was an FBI operation, specifically so the corporate media could ridicule and discredit the anti-war movement.
And that's being instituted more so today, and that's exactly what you're educating us with. But do not drive us. Do not let us be driven to the streets. I don't want to go to the streets. I'm not going to participate in blood.
Me neither. Me neither.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dan in Illinois. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just watching a YouTube video about these Red Hat protesters. And anyway, this guy in L.A. was calling for going to the Catholic school where they're from, burning down the Catholic school with them in it.
It was a DJ. Yeah, we talked about that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Uncle Shoes at House Shoes on Twitter.
Yes.
I would suggest anybody that goes on Twitter to flood his account. Don't threaten them. Just hit them and hit them and hit them. Because Twitter came out and said, basically, well, he said it, but he didn't really mean it. And they didn't do nothing to him.
Yeah. They said he didn't break the rules. I mean, that's definitely shows an editorial bias on the part of Twitter's basis. But I mean, there were a lot of people who came on out there. There was that producer who wanted to throw those kids into the wood chipper. Stormy Daniels wanted to build a wall around them. Just all this hate against these kids. It's what they were.
Yeah.
Just because they're Catholic, they're white, and they're pro-life, and that makes them the enemy.
Yeah, that's how sick they are in their heads, you know. That's why I say anybody that goes on Twitter should hit these people with tweets, I guess you'd say. I don't do that, but hit them hard. Don't threaten them. Don't, just jam up their accounts.
Well, that's one way to do it. Definitely one way to do it. All right, well, Dan, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and the phone lines are now open. So we're going to get on back here to the news here. Over in Great Britain, they're still going back and forth about Brexit, and apparently Theresa May came on out today and said, well, actually, we do have an alternative Brexit plan. which she's going to try and put on out there because apparently she's under a deadline to come up with something, or it will be the no-deal Brexit. And the doomsayers are already out there saying that a no-deal Brexit would hit global growth, and the IMF is out there saying furious voters are losing trust in governments, and it could wreck the world order. Not really. The world order is wrecking itself. That's what's going on with all of the infighting and the factionalization and the corruption. The world order is shattering itself, and we just have to stand back and let it happen, and then be prepared to basically restart our country, restart the world, with hopefully some more common sense. But the problem is, as Thomas Jefferson noted, it doesn't matter how perfectly you set up a government. Over time, the corrupt will work their way into it and corrupt the government to serve their purposes. And it is the curse of all political power that it attracts the very sort of people who should not be allowed to have it. And we keep having that proven to us over and over and over again, whether it's Maxine Waters or Dianne Feinstein or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or Hillary Clinton. And it almost seems like good people, decent people, really don't stand a chance in Washington, D.C. That you're either going to join the clique and get on board with the program, sign that little pledge to Israel, or you're not going to go anywhere. Over in Germany, the Alternative for Germany party has become the main opposition party, and as a result, the Domestic Intelligence Agency, the BFV, is basically admitting they're going to start monitoring Alternative for Germany for suspected extremism. Now, of course, extremism is one of those words that can be made to mean almost anything. We're seeing parts of Europe where it's considered extremist, if not illegal, to criticize migration. So AFD must be doing something right. They're underneath surveillance here. Over at the European Union, their parliament has voted in favor of introducing financial sanctions as punishment for countries that reject the EU's European values. Now, those European values are open borders, globalism, moving toward a federalized superstate, surrender of the national sovereignty, and the people in these European countries, they don't want that. They've had several years of it now. It's not working for them. Works great for Brussels, works great for the globalists, but the people of Europe are saying no. And so apparently the populist situation has reached the point where the European Union is out there saying, well, we're just going to fine you. We're going to take money away from you if you hold any political views outside of the ones we dictate to you. And it almost feels like this battle between nationalism, populism, and globalism is really shifting into high gear. And I think a good example of that is Pope Francis came on out literally saying that Americans would be better off under a world government. That world government must rule the United States, quote, for their own good, end quote. He also went on to support the idea that Europe must take on a federal structure resembling feudal times when the peasants were ruled by unimpeachable monarchs. So that's another name for globalism, neo-feudalism. Okay, here's a good development. This is over in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. They have basically ruled that the state of Texas can legally stop taxpayer subsidies to Planned Parenthood, primarily based on the evidence found in the undercover videos of Planned Parenthood's involvement in harvesting and selling aborted baby parts for profit. Now, these videos were first released in 2015 by Project Veritas. Actually, no, David Daleiden, founder and project lead at the Center for Medical Progress. And, of course, Planned Parenthood came on out, along with most of the corporate media, and say, oh, they're deceptively edited. They're not showing what you think they're showing. But apparently the Fifth Circuit Court took a good look at the videos, and basically said, no, they're not deceptive. They're showing what was actually going on, and they can be relied upon by Texas and other regulatory agencies as justification to cut funds for Planned Parenthood. Now, this one's going to get fought all the way up to the Supreme Court. But last week we had a story where Planned Parenthood basically came on out and admitted that their core business is selling abortion. Just getting the women in there, sucking the baby out of them, kicking them back out again. That's it. Sort of the McDonald's of depopulation, if you will. Now, Facebook has banned the controversial pro-life Roe versus Wade film starring Jon Voight from advertising the movie on the social network, claiming it is a political ad. So the liberals are out there, oh, we're going to lose our right to unfettered abortion. And I think you should. Nobody really knows when life starts. And certainly this idiotic law they're talking about in New York, where you can abort a baby up to the moment of birth. I mean, you're definitely dealing with viable children who could survive. So it's ridiculous. Okay, as you know, it's very cold in the United States right now. In fact, last night's lunar eclipse, which I got to see briefly here through the cloud cover on Oahu, apparently several schools and planetarians that had scheduled eclipse outings and parties had to cancel them due to the extreme cold. Over in New York, Governor Cuomo is urging New Yorkers to stay indoors. The temperatures with wind chill are dipping to minus 40 degrees. So we're going to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
Welcome to What Really Happened Radio. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. And now, set your eyes on the future and let's consider what really happened.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about human-caused global warming. And as you know, it's already turning out to be a very rough winter across the Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, the Northeast. Temperatures of minus 40 degrees with wind chill in New York. And already you've got the corporate media and the global warming carbon Nazis are out there saying, well, this polar vortex is evidence of global warming. See, global warming is causing the colder weather. They've been trying that one ever since the Earth started cooling off in early 2000s. So it's nonsense, of course. It's complete nonsense. But have you noticed that it seems like the hysteria surrounding reporting on climate events is getting up higher and higher? It's all headline grabbing, gloom and doom. If we don't give up fossil fuels now, we're all going to die. And, each new person that comes on out and says, well, we're going to die sooner, it's going to be more painful, it's going to be more horrible. I'm waiting for somebody to stand up and say, if we don't halt global warming right now, Godzilla will reawaken. And they're out there just pushing this idea to give up the carbon-based fuels that provide over 80% of the U.S. and global energy, to voluntarily reduce our living standards more than they already have been, to put jobs at risk. I mean, shutting down the carbon fuel system would bring about a global economic crash. But these idealists don't care. They're absolutely convinced they serve a higher purpose. They're saving planet Earth, even as the actual science evidence turns against them. The world is not warming. It's getting colder. And all of this hysteria is coming off the computer models. And the computer models have drifted away from real field measurements years ago. And you go and you talk to some of these global warming supporters and say, why don't you go on out and look at the snow and ice? And their attitude is, oh, we don't need to look at that. The computer is telling us the world is warming. And we believe, we worship at the almighty computer. It tells us Earth is doomed unless you buy carbon credits and pay carbon taxes here. But if you've noticed, going on back to when this all started with Al Gore's inconvenient spoof, all the doom and gloom predictions that they've made, none of them have happened. The polar bears have not gone extinct. The coasts have not flooded. The Arctic still has its ice. In fact, this year it's got a lot more of it. The islands out in the middle of the Pacific didn't drown. It's a fantasy. And they're using this fantasy to trick you out of your money and your obedience. Because that's how politicians operate. Take something that happens naturally and normally, declare it a crisis, and offer to sell everybody a solution. Got to take a break for station identification. Back with our guest after these few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. As most of you know, my regular listeners, I offer energy cleaners for sale at my website. If you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, go to my website, thelibertyman.com, educate yourself about these marvelous healing devices. We focus on pain mitigation and getting a great night's sleep. Arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, doesn't matter. Keep in mind, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. Energy cleaners, $285, shipping included to American zip codes. You can educate yourself all about the energy cleaner right there at my website, the patent application, the wonderful testimonials. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the energy cleaner. Now, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. I have a toll-free order line, or you can order it right at my website at thelibertyman.com. The toll-free order line is 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Thank you.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And joining us on Skype right now is Tom Kaczynski. I hope I pronounced that correct.
Thanks, Mike. Kaczynski is correct.
Kaczynski is correct. Okay. And Tom here is the author of a book, After Trump, How Nationalism Can Save America. And a mutual acquaintance basically asked me to get Tom on the show, and he sent me a copy of the book here. And it does ask a very important question. Right now, with Trump in office, we're seeing populism and nationalism gain ground in this country. But what happens after Trump leaves office and the left basically tries to reimpose their vision for the future of the country on us? So, Tom, why don't you just give us a little bit about yourself, your previous books, and why you wrote the book?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So my earlier books were Someone Has to Say It, The Hidden History of How America Was Lost, which was looked at the last 100 years of what had happened in America and how, Marxism really took root in a lot of different places. My second book is called The Coming Civil War, and it's kind of a difficult, darker book, but it talks about the challenges and the cultural battles happening between the left and the right, and the basic argument that, you can't have culture divided against itself and stand. And that's really what led to After Trump, which was people challenged me to figure out a way to figure how we could have success in the future. And it turns out the key isn't that complicated. It's to embrace nationalism and to really move away from the sort of way of thinking of things where you're going left versus right all the time, although I do lean right myself, but more to a way of thinking about things where you root it in what helps our people rather than what system works best. And I specifically say this with regard to the Republicans out there, because so often they've been in love with free market ideology or a form of libertarian thinking that hasn't necessarily been so effective. And Trump sort of showed a different way in that you could reach out to workers on a pro-America message and really have the capacity to build a much larger tent that's maybe shaped a little differently, but actually holds together quite better. So I put that together as my third book this year. And just to give a little more background about myself, I previously had worked as a town manager up in Maine, and I ended up losing my job about a year ago because I had said that I did not think Islam fit very well in America, and I had made a number of other politically incorrect comments. So I've had a very interesting year in terms of putting things out there, but I've also had the time to think now and offer some ideas that I hope are helpful to asking this important question, which is that while Trump has changed the paradigm What we don't see is a Republican Party that is shifting to match him as quickly as it should be.
Yeah, I've noticed that, but then I'm not surprised, given how during the 2016 election campaign, the GOP was never really supportive of him. They were pushing originally Jeb Bush, but he kind of flamed out. Then they were pushing Ted Cruz, even though technically he can't be president. And they were pushing, the traditional insiders, the good old boys, the parts of the network. And Trump basically came out of left field as an outsider, which was his attraction to the voters. And so the GOP didn't support him all that much then. They're not really offering him much support now. And it's another example about how the personal animosity seems to be trumping any other agenda when it comes to members of Congress making any decisions.
I think so, and I think even more deeply than that is there are permanent interests that work to make sure the parties never fully represent the interests of the people. And for a very long time, the Republican Party has really been beholden to its donor base, who gives us candidates like Jeb Bush who want open borders and low taxes. And it might be a little bit not generous to say this, but even when you look at Trump's first 2 years, his signature policy achievement was a tax cut that any Republican would have been happy with. And I think a lot of people, myself included, are disappointed that he didn't work more firmly for action on immigration before, because now that we have a Democratic House, it looks very difficult to achieve that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I supported Trump, by which I mean mostly I didn't want Hillary to get into the Oval Office. But I have to be very honest and say that Trump has been a bit of a disappointment. Now, I know he's been preoccupied with all of these incessant ongoing attacks on him, from the resistance, the Russiagate stuff. He's definitely in the hottest kitchen in the world right now. But he's failing to deliver on the promises he ran on. He's trying to deliver on immigration, which is why the same Democrats who 5 years ago voted for a border wall are now voting against it. They don't want Trump to have any political victories going into 2020. They are willing to just sacrifice the country itself to maintain their grip on power.
Well, the interesting thing about Democrats today is you have to question what their loyalty to America is. And I say this not as a light accusation, but because of the fact that they literally want to give more rights to non-citizens than citizens. You look at overwhelmingly Democratic states, how they run sanctuary cities, how they provide social welfare for illegals, and how they refuse to have law enforcement protect the people of this country. And when you look at the voting patterns across different groups, and you see how many of the illegals, as well as legals who come here, actually end up voting Democratic, you begin to understand why they're fine with having as much crime as necessary. These people are their voters, and they are not going to go ahead and speak against anyone they can bring in here. And it's sort of a scary and difficult thing to reach a point where one party explicitly now is embracing what I consider to be a replacement strategy rather than fighting off what is an invasion. We see caravan after caravan in the news being actively fostered, I believe, by some of the NGOs like the Soros Open Borders Foundation, bringing these people up here, and yet no one seems to want to do anything. And to me, that's the craziest part of the whole thing. The Republicans are kind of sitting on their hands a little bit. Trump is making some noises in the right direction, but frankly, I would see this as an emergency. And I will tell you, I was hoping when he had that speech, that evening address about 2 weeks ago now, he was going to say something more forceful, because I don't understand how you can say something's an emergency and then we're not going to do anything about it for 2 or 3 weeks because there has to be a process. It's either an emergency, in which case it demands immediate action, or it isn't. And I think Trump's failure, in my mind, is that he's tried to play within a political system that was designed to destroy people like him working within it. And in these last 2 years, he's going to have to figure out a new strategy, or it's going to be extremely painful up until what I think will be an unsuccessful 2020. He has time, but he needs to be much more decisive.
I agree with you on that one. The sense I get is that Donald Trump is easily manipulated. He's been convinced to surround himself with a bunch of neocon advisors who can talk him into and out of whatever they want. And I think a perfect example of that would be Trump's announcement a while back of a troop withdrawal from Syria. And yes, we're going to bring them home. Then immediately 24 hours later, they started waffling and said, well, there's no real timeline. It may take a while to happen. Then we had that obviously staged false flag bombing. And now this whole idea of a Syrian troop withdrawal, not to mention the Afghan troop withdrawal, is now off the table. I know that Trump is susceptible to flattery. And he may have been a great real estate mogul. He may have been a great reality TV star, and he certainly said all the right things in 2016, which you expect a candidate for president to do. But unlike so many others in the independent media who are still out there saying, there's time, at this point, Trump is a disappointment. I'm very disappointed in him, and I'm in agreement with you. He's going to be a single-term president if he even gets to the end of his first term.
It's sad to say that, but I mean, you look at someone like John Bolton coming in here, and that was really a red flag, as well as, you know, the other people who he surrounded himself with. It seems like Trump has good instincts sometimes, which he doesn't follow because he has bad advice. And
Yes.
I've noticed one other thing, which I don't know if you'll agree with, but he tends to look at business like a company, and the problem is it isn't. I mean, government ultimately has the ability to do things businesses don't. It uses compulsory force, whether we think that's good or bad. It's true. And when you have someone working for you in government, it's not like we're your CEO of a company and you can fire anyone and just deal with the consequences. But you have these permanent bureaucracies with their permanent interests. And, you know, you can't just put someone on top of them and expect them to follow you like a division. I mean, I think, in my own opinion, the biggest failure Trump had, and the cause of so many of his other cascading problems, was Jeff Sessions was absolutely the wrong choice for Attorney General. And that led to the Mueller investigation, which has led to this incessant sort of, Chinese water torture by the press, where they've always been able to go at him. And well, the press was always going to do what it was going to do. They don't need a president in there who's going to make it so easy for them to go ahead and, consistently paint this case that, enlivens the opposition and degrades his own core supporters.
Well, I think one of the reasons for the media hysteria is that Trump really hasn't given them anything they can work with. Mueller has found no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. They had another embarrassment today where this Russian hooker who was arrested in Thailand, she got sprung from jail because she claimed she had evidence of the Trump-Russia collusion. When she was out of jail, she said she just made it up. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing all of that is, despite all of the investigation and all of the digging, they haven't really found anything on Trump. So all they can keep on doing is just coming out with more and more of these lies, like this ridiculous BuzzFeed story that claimed that Michael Cohen had testified before Congress that Trump ordered him to lie to Congress. And of course, Mueller's office came on out, blew the lid off of that one. The corporate media had leapt on board that story, and they ran it everywhere because, they so wanted it to be true. And now, of course, they're having to back up and try and wipe the egg off their face and pass the blame to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, the media obviously went with a ridiculous story, although the one thing I do worry about with that particular case is I don't want to give too much credit to Robert Mueller in this case, Mueller, I should say, in this case, because while I think it's good that he went out there and said that these accusations were categorically false, I am not prepared to invest that much confidence in someone who's been a deep state hatchetman for a long time.
I agree. I
the guy
agree.
who wrote the
And
9/11 commission,
I'm not sure why Mueller did it. It may have been simply the fact that he thought somebody might be ready to leak Cohen's testimony out. And so he decided to basically seize the initiative and get the story out there before he would be embarrassed by it.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. But the thing that bothers me is, like, even though I agree with you that there's no credence to most of these claims, at least as much as we could tell, and at this point, if there was anything, I think we would know about it. I have no doubt that, say, Hillary had won in 2016, there would be investigations happening of every Republican in America.
Absolutely.
And that's what bothers me, that, that Trump has never seemed to figure out how to wield the bureaucracy because, I mean, it's a gun, let's be honest. It's a gun that gets pointed at someone, and at this point, he's kind of letting it be pointed at his own head. And that's the problem. You either get rid of the gun altogether if you think it just can't be saved, and maybe that's the case with our deep state and some of these people who are in those agencies. I certainly made that case in my second book, The Coming Civil War, that we have a government that's no longer responsive to the elected officials whom it is supposed to serve. But if you're not going to do that, you need to at least make sure you're not constantly being the source of your own investigations. I mean, how many things with the Clinton Foundation could we have been investigating? All these NGOs, why can't we look at human trafficking, which we know is happening with these caravans, that there are children coming up who are with people who are not their parents. And yet our deep state seems completely unconcerned by that. We can't get the FBI to look at it. We can't get anyone. And frankly, I don't understand why Trump doesn't go in there and just keep firing people until he finds someone who will do it. I mean, maybe that's a simplistic version of government, but I didn't vote for someone who would play games like Jeb Bush. I voted for Trump because I hoped he would take a stronger, more decisive executive stance. And to this point, we just haven't seen that.
No, we're all still waiting for that Donald Trump that we saw on The Apprentice, where he's out there saying you're fired. But again, that was just a TV show. And again, there is this huge bureaucracy. And to my mind, Trump's single biggest mistake coming into the Oval Office was he wanted to be magnanimous in victory, and he allowed all of these Obama holdovers to keep their jobs. And they immediately went to work on him, trying to get other advisors into position who would basically corral Donald Trump and steer him in the desired direction. They're still afraid of him. That's why they're trying to get rid of him. But right now they've got him under their control. What Trump should have done is he should have realized that government doesn't operate the way a business does. And just because you're the boss does not mean your underlings are loyal to you. He should have basically pink slipped everybody, brought in all new people from outside the Beltway. You know, there's no law that says only people inside the Beltway can hold the inside the Beltway jobs. What they do with those jobs, there are talented, capable people all over this country who could take those jobs, and they would come in without those compromising connections. They're not linked to the Clintons. They're not linked to Soros. They're not linked to the CIA, and that would be the kind of staff Trump would have needed to have. But unfortunately, he made that mistake, and I think it was the biggest one that he did, and he can't undo it.
I agree with you, Mike. I mean, you would think that someone who ran such a large company would understand better the importance of staffing. And this is the one thing that gets me with people who are out there always saying, well, we have to believe the absolute best of what Trump's doing. At some point, any leader knows they have to take accountability for the people they hire, the people who are underneath them, or if they inherit people, the people who they've retained. And I think that you're asking absolutely the right question, which is, what do we do with this? Because Trump needed to get rid of the wrong people. So when we ask the question where we go after Trump, I think the failures of Trump are instructive about what has to happen for the next nationalist who comes along, if we're fortunate enough to have one. And that is to have someone who goes in there decisive, bringing people in from outside the Beltway, from who don't live in Fairfax County, or Prince George's County, and who can go in there and bring a new take on this that is not, what the political class wants. Because I think, as we've seen, the uniparty remains very strong in a lot of ways. And, with the Democrats, the level of insanity that they're proposing and that their base is going to demand after Trump, I think we've reached a point of polarization where we should go out there more forcefully, make the cultural arguments that Trump has made very effectively, that people want to live in America that isn't governed by political correctness, with sound economic stewardship and a plan to seriously roll back the deep state and the powers it's allowed to implement over this country.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. One of the things that I think illustrates Trump's weakness as a leader is apparently he was listening to William Barr's confirmation hearing in Congress. And apparently when Barr came on out and said that he was good friends with Robert Mueller, apparently it took Trump completely by surprise. And so my response was, does anybody in the White House not know how to do in-depth research on somebody before they're nominated to a key government position? And I can understand that Trump himself might not sit there at the keyboard and do the digging, but certainly somebody on his staff should have. And maybe they did, and maybe it simply wasn't shared with Trump because they want William Barr in there, because he too is another one of these cover-up artists. He was linked to Ruby Ridge, definitely one of the deep staters.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, you sort of wonder if the mandarins around him are creating a bubble where he doesn't even know what's happening. I mean, let's look who he's had. Reince Priebus, who was his first chief of staff, who was a Republican Party hack. And then we had John Kelly, who was, lauded by the media as a responsible voice, which is usually a tell that he's on their side. And at this point, it seems like as much as anyone, maybe Jared Kushner is the one who serves as an intermediary, who's the informal chief of staff in a lot of different ways,
yes,
who's controlling what gets to Trump. And, I don't think he understands half the problems out here. I'm out on the a little bit farther on the right than some people, some things I post. And what Trump doesn't seem to know is we're fighting a war against censorship right now,
yes,
where the First Amendment is under attack. And I'm sure Republic Broadcasting deals with it too. I talked with John about it. It's absolutely crazy. And yet the Republicans don't talk about it. They don't know anything. And at the moment the media piles on, they will gladly signal against anyone to their right. But you never see the left do that to their own. They don't eat their own.
Okay, Tom, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When your doctor tells you have bad cholesterol or blockages in the arteries, what do? When diet and exercise is not enough, we try medications and hope for the best. For the last 2 decades, I have been telling people about a natural method to help solve these problems and more. Extendovite can help maintain cardiovascular health and lower blood lipid levels in adults. The 7 herbs in Extendovite are known to work together synergistically to get the results we hope for. There are many testimonials on Extendovite's effect on circulatory-related ailments. Get Extendovite today to start your journey back to a healthier life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or see us on amazon.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. the network thanks you.
Some have maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, distract yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Tom Kaczynski, author of the book After Trump, How Nationalism Can Save America. Well, I think we're both pretty much in agreement that Donald Trump, either because of his own personal weaknesses or because of the machinations of the deep state, has been rendered pretty much impotent. And I think this whole standoff over the border wall, it's all about political chest thumping. And it's not really about immigration or protecting America or any of that. And as you mentioned before, the Democrats want the open borders because they want those Democratic voters to just pour on in. And if you look at this resolution they just introduced in the House of Representatives, it basically guts all protections against election fraud. And we had, back during the midterms, Democratic leaders openly saying, yes, we count on the illegal immigrant vote to win. Well, illegal immigrants aren't supposed to vote. So we have a government that is itself gone outlaw and definitely does not follow the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which to me means the U.S. government has already made itself illegitimate, and now we just have to sort of figure out a way to limit the damage. I don't have any expectations Trump is going to reverse the trend for the remainder of his term in office, and I do think he's going to be a one-term president.
Yeah, Mike, I increasingly I find myself agreeing with you, and what really terrifies me more than anything at this point is that in the desire to make a deal, he makes a bad one on immigration where, you know, for this $6 billion, which won't even be enough to even fund the wall, certainly not the wall that was promised. And from the best estimates I've read, where it would be somewhere between $20 and $30 billion, not enough to fund the wall at all. He might offer, you know, amnesty to the DACA people. He might offer a wider amnesty. And, you know, as the government shutdown continues, the drumbeat is going to get louder. And frankly, I think it's fine if he keeps it shut down as long as he needs to. This sort of confrontationism is his best bet. But I don't see him actually doing that. I just don't think he's going to have the gumption, probably as much as anything, because as I think you sort of hinted at, but maybe didn't say explicitly, is he cares a whole lot about the media thinks. He'll see something on TV and he'll follow it. I sometimes literally watch like a show on Fox News and watch Trump's opinion match what he saw on TV, and then see something the next day and watch his opinion move again. And it's one thing to be responsive to the news cycle. It's another thing to be driven by it. And I'm just sort of disturbed at his lack of leadership on some of these topics.
Yeah, that's a good observation that you made there. And I mean, Trump is already signaling he's willing to compromise and soften on the border wall, and he doesn't seem to understand that Schumer and Pelosi are smelling blood in the water. They don't want to compromise. They want total capitulation for political gain. They want to make sure that Trump has got nothing to run on going into 2020. They're going to campaign in 2020. Look, Trump didn't do anything. He promised you this. It didn't happen. He promised he was going to clean up the election system. That didn't happen. He promised he was going to look into vaccine safety. That didn't happen. He promised he was going to control immigration. But again, this immigration issue, this is Schumer and Pelosi who want those borders open because it's a guaranteed source of Democratic voters. And for the midterms, you know, these illegal immigrants, they get funneled into congressional districts that are just slightly red, with enough people being sent on in to switch them to just slightly blue. And that's what happened out in California. That's why California Republicans lost so many of their seats in the House of Representatives. California's always been traditionally a red state, a GOP stronghold, and now all of a sudden it's been turned blue. And the reason is very obviously, as you called it before, it's a replacement strategy. right now there is a media war against white heterosexual males, and meanwhile, of course, all of these refugees and immigrants are being welcomed in with open arms. They're being treated by our government, or let me say the government, better than that government treats our own legal American citizens, especially our homeless veterans. And so,
Oh, absolutely, Mike. And it's not just a problem down there. I live up in Maine, and we recently elected a Democratic governor up here to our dismay. She's expanding Medicare benefits, and there's 40,000 Somali refugees or, descendants of who live up here who were deliberately seeded up here to change what is actually a much closer state electorally than people realize. Now, we're not a very big state. Maine has about 1.1 million people. And a group like that who votes as a bloc can be decisive in changing things. Where we had elections that were lost by 10, 20,000 votes. And all the benefits are going to them. And meanwhile, we live also in the oldest state in America where now people who live here can't get social welfare benefits because there's not enough money in the government, and the money is being prioritized to the non-citizens. It's an absolutely disgusting thing that, nationalists should be able to call out. And one other thing I want to add to bring back to the point you were talking about voting is we should be able to have some sort of federal legislation that requires voting with proof of citizenship, some form of identification.
we used to have that. We used to have that. Back in 2016, Democratic lawyers went all over the country declaring voter ID laws were racist. We have to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Ann, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. By Croc, I love this product. It really works. By Brad, works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, I mean the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay. Unemployment getting worse.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're still talking with Tom Kaczynski about his book, After Trump, How Nationalism Can Save America. And I think we've talked about Trump himself and his shortcomings. I want to get into the nationalism issue. I'm looking through the index of your book, and the title of Chapter 3 leaps right out at me. The GOP must fight the culture war with equal force. And I will confess I haven't actually read the chapter itself, but I think part of the problem, of course, is this is not right versus left, Democrat versus Republican. This is nationalism against globalism, and unfortunately, there are a lot of members of the Republican establishment who've been caught up in this frenzy to build a globalist government. And so that's why support for Trump has been very soft. He is seen as anti-globalist, pro-nationalist. Remember when he first came out with the Make America Great Again hats, they were declared as racist. And as we saw over this last weekend, people wearing those hats are being subjected to violence and harassments in the streets of America. So why don't you tell us, I mean, first of all, what exactly is nationalism? And then we'll get into what are we going to do after Donald Trump is gone.
Nationalism, in its simplest terms, is the philosophy that the purpose of government is to put its people first. And it sounds really simple, but it's not what we actually practice. If you think of what at least how it's described, the political split in America for quite a while now has been described between people who basically believe the market and smaller government is best, which is the right, and people who believe the state and larger government is better, which is the left. And what I'm arguing is that the left has transitioned, as you said, and I think rightly, to a global sort of institutional approach to governance, which doesn't look at borders as anything but something to work within a larger international matrix, and that is in love with this system. And their core concept is they want to equalize outcomes between countries around the world and to use government force to impose those outcomes. What I say is that nationalism from a rightist perspective should stand against that, move beyond this idea that, our societies have to be the fulfillment of a system. Sometimes state solutions do work. Sometimes market solutions do work. But what's more important is that we ask this question that is what we're doing working for the interest of our citizens, and to recognize that the responsibility of our government is to look out for the American citizens and not to be looking out for the welfare of the world. Not that we have malice for other countries or that we wish them poorly, but we recognize there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. There isn't a massive institution. And where they are universalists, it turns out that nationalism is a form of particularism, right?
Yes.
That creates peace, because you can admit if someone thinks differently than you and has a different faith and a different belief structure, and they have their own country with their own borders that is separate from you, you can live in peace because you dominate here in America, they dominate there in places they live. But the problem today with multiculturalism, and this is why I talk about culture in this book so heavily, is that all these different versions of truth are superimposed on top of one another in such a way where it's impossible to make any good judgments, where it's impossible to have any sort of values, and it's impossible to serve the interests of your people because you're told you need to serve the interest of everyone. And the American people deserve better than that, especially the people on the right who are your traditional people. Men don't deserve to be, Me Too'd out of any job as an accusation. Heterosexuals shouldn't be punished for living according to their beliefs. Whites should not be targeted for, being paid for everyone else in this country. But all of these things happen because no one has been willing to say, well, who are Americans? What are we fighting for? And why don't we just work for our own citizens, not this aspirational coalition of who we're supposed to come, where we bring in everyone from around the world, but the people who actually built America and the generations of immigrants who came not for a welfare check and a free house, but just an opportunity.
Well, you know, and those immigrants all came in through the legal immigration system, and I don't have a problem with that. One of the issues that we need to keep in mind is at the core of liberalism is the belief that it is a one-size-fits-all solution that can work. And of course, it really doesn't. We can see that from the increasing tension between the liberals, PC warriors, social justice warriors, and everybody else. It sounds like a really good idea, but it doesn't work. And that's because human nature is going to be human nature is going to be human nature. And that is something liberals absolutely deny. And this, of course, goes back to Margaret Mead's book, Coming of Age in Samoa, which laid the entire academic groundwork for liberalism by saying that, yes, if you change the environment the person is living in, you can change how they feel, how they think, how they feel. But Mead's book was a fraud. It's been discredited many times. But yet that idea that if liberals simply change the environment enough, everybody will be happy, that's really what's behind all of this political correctness and you know, social justice warriors. They're trying to change the environment into something they think everybody can be happy in. Of course, it's making them happy. They're happy in it. But for, as you mentioned, the heterosexuals and us white males and a lot of other people, we're not happy in it at all. We're not allowed to live our lives the way we see fit. And it's not like we're going on out and being, you know, violent or anything like some of these liberal activists are. We just want to be left alone to live our lives the way we see fit.
And the problem with that is, if we're really honest, we have been in flight for 60 years. I mean, look at every major city in America. They're dominated by Democrats, and not liberal Democrats, progressive socialists. Let's be very blunt about who runs these cities. And most of them have been in states of decay, high levels of crime, all sorts of different problems. And we have retreated to the suburbs, and now we've retreated to the country. And what I think we're reaching is a point where we need to get out there, articulate an alternative, stop apologizing, stop being afraid of labels. I mean, I've been called every label in the book. I'll tell you the truth. I'm on the hate list of the SPLC, the ADL, and I've been called every name on the book just because I said Islam isn't compatible with Western civilization, a religion whose founder practiced pedophilia, who, you know, currently practices female genital mutilation. And in fact, I'll tell you something even crazier. Up here in Maine, they had a bill before the state house to ban that for the protection of women, something you would think the left and its feminist supporters would want. They blocked it. And it's absolutely crazy, but they have become so beholden to this universalist belief and this victim culture where you have to allow anyone to do whatever as long as it isn't part of the traditional group. And I think people are just so sick of it, and they want people to stand up and say, hey, these are my beliefs. Call me what you want. I'm not going to let your labels stop me from succeeding. That's how Trump succeeded. Mm-hmm. And if he had followed through, I think he would have been a great president. But it's indicative of how we need to succeed going forward, which is we need to wed nationalism with populism, where we go ahead and serve the interests of the people, speak to the things they're concerned about, find legitimate answers, and stop bringing in these people who do not belong here. And I will say something that I take as a stronger position than some. Frankly, we need to stop legal immigration, not because the people who are coming here are bad, but because we haven't integrated any one of the 40 million residents we currently have living in the United States who are not born here, because we don't even have a culture of our own to defend anymore.
And we don't have an economy to even support them. And it's just a huge, huge drain. And again, we're seeing the Democrats, they don't care about any of this. They don't care about the contagious diseases being brought in. They don't care about the increase in crime. They don't care about the rapes that are going on. All they care about is having these illegal immigrants who can be counted on voting demographic to cement their hold on power. We're going to turn into a single political party state like the former Soviet Union. The GOP, they're just going to fade away. And I'm sure at the last second, you know, they'll switch over and say, oh, well, we're going to join, you know, with the Democrats. And it'll be one party, one country.
If you look at where the voters are coming in, what's happening with the 2020 census, including the recent ridiculous ruling, you can't ask if someone's a citizen and determine the allocation of congressional votes. But just look at where the people are, how the votes are changing, and demography changing. Where about every 4 years, the population, due to immigration and birth rates, is getting 3% more Democratic. Come the 2028 election, we will not be able to see Republicans win elections at the national level anymore. People don't see this because it's a lagging indicator. But if you just look at simple demographics, who is in this country right now, the numbers of people and how they vote, and doing it by race, honestly, is the fastest way, even though it's unpopular. Whites vote more or less 50-50. They vote about 60% for Republicans, although Jews vote 70% for Democrats. They're an outlier. Hispanics vote 2 out of 3 are going to vote for Democrats. 3 out of 4 Asians are going to vote for Democrats. 9 out of 10 blacks are going to vote for Democrats. And that pattern has been consistent since 1980. Yet the Republican Party goes out there all the time and promises to be the same sort of cultural message that the left puts out there. We're going to give you free things. We're going to give you affirmative action. We're going to do that. And Americans are ready for a different message, I think. They're ready for a message of fairness, saying you earn your keep. It's a meritocratic message. It is not a prejudicial or racial message, but it is a message that does not give things to other people. And what we need to do when we do that is also say, we will defend your values and we will not let you be called a horrible person, a racist, a bigot, a xenophobe, whatever term you want, for speaking common sense. Because at this point, and I think you'd agree with me, Mike, we have criminalized the use of reason when it conflicts with social engineering that they're trying to practice.
I do agree. We've entered a period where calm, rational analysis is being discouraged in politics, in the media. I mean, look at some of those whopper lies they tried to feed us over the last few weeks here. Even in our schools, critical thinking and analysis is being de-emphasized. It's all about believing the slogan, believing the jingoism that's on out there. And our country is basically being taken over by sloganeers.
Well, and the thing that's really horrible about it, as we see over and over again, and this goes to the totalitarianism you were mentioning, is any problem that government creates, they suggest the solution is more government and more government agencies and more government intervention in our lives. Like it's a parasite that feeds on itself because it's trying to realize an irrational goal. Equality in human society has only been created through one of two ways: abject poverty imposed through violence, or death. Because people are unequal. We are different. The best thing about us is that we are distinctive individuals with unequal talents. And instead of being a society based on opportunity and the assumption of excellence, which is something where we can build ourselves to a better place, we have accepted this idea that we are only as good as the worst among us, and that we have tried to make everything like the worst among us. We celebrate a pop culture that is entirely degenerate, and we don't even offer an alternative because it would be to be judgmental or discriminatory. 100 years ago, those terms themselves were seen as positive attributes of men who used reason and judgment in accordance with nature, as our founders did, to make wise decisions. But we were engineered away from that. America has become something where the inmates are running the asylum. And you just look at things like I was reading recently, the American Psychological Association was saying masculinity is toxic now. They're attacking fathers for going ahead and teaching boys how to become men. When is it going to stop? When are we going to kick the trannies out of the girls' restroom? Someone tell me, please, because I talk to a lot of people, and people are begging for this, and our political leadership says, oh, we can't do that. The media will kill us. Well, the right doesn't trust the media. But the problem is these people in D.C. live in such a bubble. Even the people who we elect, they go there and they forget where they're from. They forget that message. And I think that's what we need people to say. Nothing radical, just the historical wisdom that everyone has known and everyone in their heart still knows. Only a few people believe these crazy things, but no one's willing to articulate the counter argument, because if they do, they get attacked, they get labeled, they can't get jobs. And people need to understand how awful this machine used is, but also how thin a veneer it is. It's very well funded, but it's not popular. It's not loved people want to laugh. People want to celebrate what is good. And I think in this book, after Trump, I start making the case for how we get there, which is just to talk honestly, because one truth can reveal 1,000 lies. And that's what we got to start doing.
Well, I'm in agreement with that one, certainly. And it does feel like our society is fracturing apart. And again, I don't think this process is proceeding the way the liberals and globalists who dreamt it all up is actually working, or was going to work. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing all of a sudden this more intense push to go after white male heterosexuals. And you're right, this idea that masculinity is toxic, and they're literally out there saying that we have to teach young boys to be more like young girls. And that's not going to work on out.
The other thing, too, is watch any commercial on TV. They're teaching young girls to be like young boys. Every girl is an athlete. Every girl is out there physical. And I watch a guy on TV. The only time I ever see a white guy on TV is if he's a doofus or he's carrying around 6 kids like the wife used to do. And that is no accident. People need to understand there is a deep engineering project happening here to conflate everything into being like everything else so that we can't make judgments. Like, for instance, the other day I was watching people having a debate about whether it was okay for a 7-year-old who was identifying as transgender to get sexual therapy. And I was like, why aren't we missing the point that we're sexualizing a little kid? But they put so many layers, and this is cultural Marxism right out of the Frankfurt School. They use language in ways that confuses the intellect and reason, where you end up arguing these nonsensical things that are so far to the left, you don't realize all the points you've conceded along the way that remove you so far from rationality, you can't comment. And I think that's why so many people have just given up on politics and have become apathetic, because no one ever made a moral stance on just the simple thing that there are certain things that are just true, whether we like them or dislike them, but we like to pretend that we can make anything whatever we want it to be and that that's truth. And if you set a fiction at the heart of your culture and society, which is the problem of Western civilization in America and in Europe, frankly, how are you going to hold it together? And the answer is, even if a barbarian came in, someone who came from the third world, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but who just recognizes up is up and down is down, well, that's how you lose a civilization, to decadence where you don't even have a connection to reality anymore. And our people need to get real very quickly, because if they don't do it now, when the left takes power, they will force you to do so on their terms.
You're absolutely right about that. We have to take one more break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective, and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AROutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus magful clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AROutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far 5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. How we're finishing up now with Tom Kaczynski and his book, After Trump, How Nationalism Can Save America. And I was perusing that last chapter about what happens if we fail, when you were talking about some of these countries that plunged into Marxism and how badly they fared. And I noticed where you made the statement that if people are not allowed to keep what they earn, that they stop being producers and they start being recipients. And we're seeing a lot of that happen across this country right now. But in the end, it all comes down to a situation. Who's going to pay for it all? If everybody is on the government dole, where does the money come from?
Well, you know, the funny thing about that, Mike, I think, is when that happens, nobody pays for it. What happens is people start taking, and what they'll start with is the easy stuff. They'll take the money that's out there, any money that's saved, you know, they start selling buildings. I mean, we've seen cities go into decay. It's a good example of it. They start selling off their valuable assets to go ahead and pay for things, and then they sell off the non-valuable ones. And pretty soon it gets to the point where no one's being taken care of. And that's where we will go. We will get to a point where the people who can afford to leave will, the people who can't will stay, and they'll stop doing things. And we will reach a point where America, which we used to be a wonderful first world country, will succumb to something terrible. I think a good example for people to look at, if you're not familiar, is South Africa, which was a prosperous first world country in 1980 and now has declining standards of living, has regularized institutional violence. Some would argue white genocide happens there, that land appropriation bills are being put where literally land that has been privately owned for hundreds of years is being stolen, and where I think last year they almost ran out of water in a city that sits on a river, which just shows you how crazy it's getting. But this is what happens. You end up with Potemkin villages when you place ideology above production and you don't allow people the opportunity to keep what they earn. I think that, unfortunately, we are going down that direction. You look at someone like Ocasio-Cortez, for instance, who's arguing we need a 70% tax rate and that we need to have a Green New Deal that has no energy production, but that instead goes ahead and pays for health care for everyone. Well, I don't know how you bake a pie out of nothing but hopes and good dreams, but that's what these people think. And I don't blame them, because they were raised in an education system that never introduced them to the idea of reality. Many people, as impolitic as it was to say, were raised by parents who either weren't there or maybe one parent, by schools that gave them substandard education without the ability to think, a Common Core curriculum that's designed to teach you to function at a minimal level. And people don't know any better. And unfortunately, we now have an ideology where that which most people support, we consider to be the best solution. So instead of choosing excellence, we choose numbers. And it's the old saying, if everyone jumped off a bridge, would you do it? Well, we're going to find out here in America unless we change real quick, because everyone looks like they're putting their diving caps on to me. I wish I was more optimistic, but it's difficult to look out there and feel happy about where things are going, you know?
Rivera, we lost your audio.
If anyone's interested in my books, please check me out at nationalright.us. I appreciate that, and contact me at tom@nationalright.us. My books are available on Amazon. And Mike, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for being on the air today. And that's the end of our show. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share them with everybody else. And please donate to RBN. Donate to whatreallyhappened.com. Have a good rest of Martin Luther King Day. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.